Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, I want you to imagine stepping into a city so magnificent that it literally leaves you speechless. That's exactly how the famous 14th century Moroccan scholar and traveler Ibn Battuta felt in 1330. After spending several months there, he described it as a place of marvels and wonders, with magnificent architecture, bustling markets, and a highly cultured population. And honestly, that mythical aura absolutely still surrounds our subject today.
We are, for sure, talking about Samarkand. Located in modern-day Uzbekistan, it boasts a sweeping 2,500-year history, sitting right at the crossroads of the world along the legendary Silk Road. In this explainer, we're going to take the massive timeline of this open-air museum and distill it into a clear, structured journey, looking closely at how its stunning architecture and vibrant culture evolved over the centuries.
Okay, let's dive into this. Our roadmap today covers 6 key stops. First up, ancient Afrasiab, birth of a city. Second, Silk Road Crossroads, a hub of trade. Third, the Timurid Golden Age, architectural shift. Fourth, Ulugh legacy, scientific powerhouse. Fifth, Shai Zinda magic, the living king. And finally, preserving the past, modern challenges.
Starting right off with part 1, ancient Afrasiab, the birth of a city.
Now, what's really interesting about this ancient 4th century BC settlement is its sheer scale. It was a massive 220-hectare city divided into 3 incredibly well-defined parts. You had the Ark, which was the high, fortified citadel. Below that sat the Shahrastan, the walled, aristocratic city. And wrapping around the outside was the Rabat, which was this bustling commercial suburb filled with bazaars and craftsmen.
And we're not talking about some primitive village here. The urban planning was incredibly sophisticated. Founded by Iranian-speaking Sogdians, Afrasiab was defended naturally by deep ravines and then artificially by high walls and moats. Inside, it was a highly organized society. Neighborhoods actually maintained their own stone-paved streets. And get this, they had an advanced network of lead-lined water plumbing feeding into outdoor pools for drinking and irrigation. No way, right? While ordinary houses were just sun-dried brick, wealthier folks used burnt brick. The whole place was a major manufacturing hub, especially famous for its high-quality ceramics.
Which naturally brings us to part 2, Silk Road Crossroads, a hub of trade.
You know, when you're sitting right on the main trade route linking China to the Mediterranean, everyone wants a piece of you. Because of this, Samarkand saw rapid and intense shifts in imperial power. In the 4th century BC, Alexander the Great and the Greeks rolled in. By the 8th century, the Arabs arrived, and they fundamentally shifted the region to Islam. The 13th century brought the fierce devastation of the Mongols. And then, the 14th century sparked this incredible renaissance under the Timurid dynasty. The big takeaway here is that each of these conquests completely disrupted the status quo, adding totally new, vibrant, cultural and architectural layers to the city.
So here's a real game changer, brought in via these trade routes and captured by the Arabs in the 8th century. Paper, specifically Samarkand silk paper. Made from mulberry trees, this stuff was a massive technological leap. It was highly durable, with a smooth, almost glossy finish that allowed for razor-sharp ink lines. Compare that to the standard papyrus or parchment everyone else was using, which had a rough texture, easily warped or bled ink, and broke down much faster. Samarkand paper absolutely revolutionized Islamic art, science, and calligraphy. It was simply unmatched.
All that wealth and innovation sets the stage perfectly for part 3, the Timurid Golden Age, and a massive architectural shift.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the city physically transformed. The whole city center essentially packed up and moved south, away from the old ruins of Afrasiab, into a brand new polygonal walled city with 6 main gates. This new core gave rise to those iconic, majestic monuments we think of today, like the breathtaking Gur Amir Mausoleum, the monumental Bibi Kano Mosque, and the famous Registan. They became the beating heart of urban life.
But the Timurid era wasn't just about expanding. It was about building on an awe-inspiring scale. The ruler, Timur, brought in sturdy new city walls, a gigantic domed market structure at Charsu, which amazingly is still in use today, and massive representative buildings. He wasn't just building mosques, madrasas, and baths for utility. He was building them to honor his family and deliberately overwhelm anyone who visited with the staggering scale and sheer richness of his capital.
But it wasn't all just art and architecture. Which brings us to part 4, Ulugh legacy, a scientific powerhouse.
48. That is the massive diameter in meters of the cylindrical astronomical observatory built in Samarkand by Timur's grandson, Ulu Bek. Inside, it housed a gigantic meridian arc that reached all the way to the flat roof, allowing his astronomers to fix the coordinates of celestial bodies with unmatched precision. The sheer scale of his scientific ambition was literally unmatched anywhere else in the world at that time.
And the results? Well, they speak for themselves. Ulu Bek and his team created the new astronomical tables, a masterwork that accurately cataloged the coordinates of over 1,000 stars. Not only that, they precisely calculated the length of the year and the tilt of the Earth's axis. This catalog was so incredibly accurate that it became famous all the way across Europe, India, and China.
So the crucial point is, to fuel this kind of research, he built the Ulugbek Madrasa right on Registam Square around 1415. This was the premier STEM university of its day, teaching math, geometry, and astronomy. Its minarets towered 33 meters high. And get this, he actually chose a wandering dervish in rags as its first rector, simply because the man possessed profound intellect. The building's devotion to science was literally baked into its design. The massive entrance portal was beautifully decorated with a mosaic symbolizing a starry sky.
Now let's head north and explore Part 5, Shah-e-Zinda Magic, the Living King.
If you're wondering about the name, Shah-e-Zinda literally translates to living king. This is a nod to Qusam ibn Abbas. He was a cousin of the Prophet Muhammad, the very first to bring Islam to the region, and local lore says he is buried right here. Because of that powerful foundational lore, this spot became incredibly sacred, leading to centuries of dense, elaborate construction built up around his original shrine.
And visually, it is just staggering. The complex is made up of 11 surviving interconnected mausoleums built one after another between the 11th and 15th centuries. Walking through it is like walking through a physical timeline of architecture. Every surface is adorned with deep blue and turquoise glazed tiles packed with intricate floral and geometric mosaics. It became the final resting place for Timur's female relatives and his top generals, transforming a sacred shrine into an absolute masterpiece of Timurid art.
Finally, we arrive at Part 6, Preserving the Past and its Modern Challenges.
Let's move to and see how this builds. When you look at Samarkand's historical growth, it's almost like looking at the rings of a giant tree. On one side, you have ancient Afrasiab. Right next to it is the Timurid city. And then, wrapping entirely around those ancient protected core zones is the modern radial city that developed throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. It's an entire city expanding outward, layer by layer, over 2.5 millennia.
So what does this all mean for us today? It leaves us with a really critical question. After 2,500 years of constant reinvention, how do we successfully balance the relentless momentum of modern urban growth with the preservation of our shared human heritage? How do we keep building the new without destroying the old? It's a massive challenge and a provocative thought to leave you with as you reflect on the layered, mythical magic of Samarkand. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today.